So for the groups that I work with, I mean, Coalition stands at the very center of our work and stands at the very center of who we are, actually, as people who find ourselves at the intersection of different communities. On one hand, we work with our LGBT brothers and sisters to make sure that their work has a racial and ethnic analysis in it, right? At the same time, we're working with our Asian American and Pacific Islander organizations to make sure that they're addressing homophobia and transphobia that's all too often happening in our communities. One way in which we do this is to make sure that the analysis that is out there on LGBT issues is not only reflective of our perspectives as Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, but in fact it's also done in the languages our communities speak. So I did want to make a little slight plug for the multilingual materials that we do have. Do I have a copy with me? Out in front, there is a copy of our Statement of Principles. Nassim is holding it in her hand. Thank you. It's our Statement of Principles on Immigration Reform. It is the only document that talks about LGBT perspectives on immigration reform that is translated into Asian languages. We also have a piece that talks about the census. Hopefully people are beginning to talk about the census and the impact on LGBT families, and that also is the only piece that talks about LGBT issues that's translated into Asian languages. I mean, I do hope that we can talk about the unique implications of the census, especially this time around our communities, but I'm here today to really talk to you about our immigration work. I mean, on one hand, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, our perspective on immigration is often downplayed, right? Like when we talk about immigration, who are we talking about? Right? We're often talking about Latinos, and you know, and which is not to downplay the collective role that all of us have, right, as immigrants. But it is to say that there are decisions that are made out there that are not under our control about, you know, how these issues get framed. But at the same time, I would say that as a community that's over 60% foreign-born, these issues disproportionately affect us, and it is up to us to make sure that our voices are being heard. At the same time, within the LGBT community, the issues often around LGBT immigration often get kind of narrowly focused to just within the purview of binational couples. We've talked a little bit about this in our previous speakers. And, but what I want to say is that, I mean, I want to be clear here, right? So we as an organization in CAPIA certainly supports the ability of binational couples to be reunited. We think it's a very clear example of prejudice, right? Like you can petition you and you not so much, right? So the Uniting American Families Act is the piece of legislation that is intended to fix that, that discrepancy, and it will essentially change the immigration law to allow same-sex couples the ability to petition each other in the same way that straight couples do, right? So we certainly support the Uniting American Families Act. I've been working on immigration for a long time now, and I've seen this issue evolve from being on the periphery of both the LGBT movement as well as the immigrant rights movement to now where it occupies kind of a key position in both. Unfortunately, it occupies that key position because it's very controversial. And it just sort of it makes all of these issues which were already separately controversial even more so. As a Filipino American, though, I'm actually personally very invested in this issue. I think about the family of Shirley Tan and Jay Mercado. How many people here have heard of their story? They're a Filipino lesbian couple in Pacifica. Shirley faced a lot of violence back at home. She came to this country and was able to find love with Jay, a naturalized citizen. They are in many ways the spokesfamily for the Uniting American Families Act, which is now the only relief that's available to them. They have a limited fix because of the intervention of Senator Feinstein, but they have emerged as a spokesfamily of this issue, from their testimony before the Senate to their coverage in People magazine. And for me, as someone who's Filipino and who's gay, to look at them and see them really turning it out is very personally inspiring to me. But by looking at UAFA, the Uniting American Families Act, solely as the gay issue of CIR, really in some ways does a profound disservice to both. You know, evaluating comprehensive immigration reform's inclusiveness LGBT community solely through the litmus test of whether or not it includes this one provision fails to recognize the unique ways in which all of the other things that we've been talking about affect our communities, right? So, for example, Cambodian refugees are now being deported because of draconian immigration laws that have made it easier and lowered the bar on deportable offenses, and at the same time they've limited the discretion of immigration judges to intervene on individual cases. For these folks who came out of the closet in the cultural context of the US and now are being sent back to a country that they may not have known, you know, that involves a whole other set of closets that I think we need to think about a little more directly. Immigration affects all of us in the API community. I myself am a citizen, but as a Filipino American, I know that the Philippines has the longest backlogs of family petitions, right? Upwards of about 20 years for some of the categories that Richard was talking about before. So although the idea, and one of the pieces in comprehensive immigration reform will in fact address family reunification and allow for the kind of removal of the family backlogs, so while that issue does not necessarily affect me because I am gay, as someone who is gay and Filipino and has to wait 20 years, I don't have the luxury of dividing these into very neat categories. I also want to be clear about the fact that even if the Uniting American Families Act does not become envisioned as a deal breaker for the LGBT community, you know, if we talk about it, that does not give the immigrant rights community the ability to be taken off the hook in fighting for inclusion of our communities. You know, we have to say that UAFA is important to us, but so is family reunification. So is a path to citizenship. So is addressing the enforcement issues, including deportation and detention, and all of these things that affect all of our communities. Political pragmatism that may keep a fragile coalition together that includes both faith-based groups and LGBT families should not be mistaken as a willingness to silence our voices or to go back into the closet. What's required, in my view, is not an analysis of LGBT issues in the comprehensive immigration reform debate, but rather an LGBT analysis of the comprehensive immigration reform debate. How do the bills and policies that are on the table affect us not as immigrants or LGBT people, but as immigrants and LGBT people? And for those of us who may be both, how do their unique stories of life at the intersections of these controversialized communities, I think I've made that word up, how do they give us the ability to create new understandings of both of these communities? I just want to close by saying that this call for kind of an intersectional analysis is not just a buzzword to comfort our progressive sensibilities, right? It's the politically pragmatic move to strengthen our coalitions to see where they connect. It's the smart thing to do, and it's the right thing to do.